making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik Pacell, the founding host of the podcast, and I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker, and my first feature film, The Alternate, will be coming out on September 13th. Woo!
I'm Liz Manishaw. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, Bread and Butter and Speed of Life, currently in development on a smattering of others. I'm a distribution consultant who does sales, and I used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative. This week, we welcome writer Charla Lauriston to the show to talk about how she got into her first writer's room, how the whole system works, and also all about her writer's course, which she designed to teach writers all about all the other parts of being a writer besides actually writing the script. After that, we have an article from No Film School about how Bradley Cooper was made fun of by the Hollywood elite for his Oscar nominations. And I guess Alrik asked me a question about filmmaking. But first, Alrik, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Just trying to stay cool out here in Northern California, which you'd think would be easy. But where I live, it gets hot as fuck. It's going to be 99 degrees today. So I'm just trying to stay cool. I read a script over the weekend that I really liked. And I'm basically I'm reading it again now, and I'm trying to decide, it's like, do I want to try to convince the writer that I can make this my next movie, or is it that good? Cause it's good. It's really good. Mm-hmm. But it's like, is it great? Is it worth the years?
Mm-hmm.
The years it'll take to make it, is it worth it? So I'm trying to figure that out right now. And then, completely random, I went to a barbecue this weekend and I got introduced to somebody who is in film financing and looking for projects. So I've got a meeting today. We'll see how it goes.
Sorry.
Fingers crossed.
I think every time either of us mentions things like that, it's always really exciting. And it's been happening more frequently than it used to.
I know. Never, ever get introduced to people with money, ever. And all of a sudden, it's just okay. And, I looked him up. He's got some cool stuff that he's done. And, I can see that he's looking to do more and kind of ramp up. But, well, I don't know. I don't know them at all. So
You'll see.
I'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, but I don't know. That's the most exciting thing. What's going on with you?
I want to go back to your script thing because I think maybe 50% of the next project is the teammate. So right. Do you want to allow some room to see if you two get along and you like each other's company first to push you over the edge?
Well, I already know him pretty well.
So you already know.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more what can I say without saying anything? I guess it's he's kind of relatively new to writing, although he's written a lot of scripts. I think 3 or 4 and a pilot. So it feels like a lot. And 2 of the ones I've read, what have I read? I read 2.5 of his plus the pilot. Mm-hmm. And pretty much one of them I absolutely love, and this one I like a lot too. So for whatever reason, we're on the same wavelength. We really kind of have really similar interests, and so I feel like it would be good. But I think he wants to use his scripts to further his career, and I don't think he's necessarily interested in having one be locked up with me, getting it made. I think he wants to try to sell it to a studio or whatever and that kind of stuff. And so I haven't really talked to him yet about what I would want from him and what it would mean. But I'm getting, based on the conversations I've had about his other projects, I just don't think that he's going to want to do it. I think he's going to be no, I want to make this a big payday. I want to get in with blah, blah, blah. And it's you could just get this movie made instead, or it'll be a long road, but at least we'll make something,
Yeah.
But I don't think he's necessarily there yet. So I want to talk. I got to read it again, decide if it's really as good as I think it is. Because it's the first 50 pages, I had 0 notes. It was everything that happened in the story. I was this is amazing. I love it. Perfect. This is what I would do. Amazing. And then around 50 pages, there's one thing that happens where I'm okay, that's not as strong as it could be. And then there's a couple other things later on that didn't seem as strong as they could be towards the end. But I have got to reread it to make sure I didn't miss anything and make sure that did he lay the groundwork for the ending better than I think he did? And like kind of so far there are signs, but it's like I still feel like it's also an early draft. So I mean, he's definitely willing to work on it and make it better. But I'm trying to decide for myself. It's like, do I do this, or like, do I focus all my energy into writing and write this movie that I've been procrastinating? I think that's probably the thing I really should do for myself. It's like a better choice to like just write a script and actually have control over something where I'm not just collaborating with other people. But I think on the other hand, like I'm really attracted to the collaboration and the idea of, you know, starting to make another movie. Like I think that's very exciting to me. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do yet, but it's an interesting place to be at.
I think you could do both.
Oh my God.
I do. I think you could. I'm just putting it out there. I think you could do it. But yes, I guess it's the prioritization of your day. Like if you look at a day or you look at a week, like what are you going to use that block of time for? I get that.
Yeah. I don't know. What's happened with me lately is like if I read a script or I'm, you know, working on something or like, you know, thinking about it, it's like it's like that movie, that idea kind of sucks up all my creative energy, and I'm thinking of ideas and creative solutions and fun story ideas for that idea. And then the other one that I'm trying to write, like that, all the energy is going to another project. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe I can't do both. Maybe I'm not that kind of person who can do
Maybe
both,
just don't want to. I mean, like, I don't know if it's a can or can't. And like, but I'm not saying as like, you know, like you're incapable, but like as in maybe it's more fun to just do one at a time. Because I don't think it's about capability at all. I think it's about like...
Yeah, I can definitely switch gears onto other things. It's just, I think you're probably right. It's more like I don't want to. Like I want to be obsessed with one thing.
Yeah.
And just be focused on it, you know?
I think that's fair. Well, I wanted to give you an update on the fact that I'm a genre filmmaker now. I make genre films. Just look at me. I'm a genre filmmaker. And why? Why couldn't I say that before? Because I have a fragile ego and I got accepted into a genre film festival, which makes me officially a genre filmmaker instead of me just deciding, basically making fun of the fact that I'm celebrating something I could have celebrated a week ago. But I got into a genre festival. So,
well, not just a genre festival. We can't say which one, but
we can.
Oh, we're allowed. Oh, then please.
They emailed me today. I got into Scream Fest with my short Witchy, which is very, very exciting. It was one of my target festivals that I wanted to get into, but I didn't believe it was real. So they sent me an email yesterday, and the email's like, Liz, we would like Witchy for our LA festival for your LA premiere. Rachel. And so I thought, surely this is a scam. And I wrote like many drafts of emails being like, can you verify your identity in some way? Like, I don't know if I believe you, but I never sent these drafts. And then I started contacting other people, sending them screen grabs of the email saying, this doesn't look legit. What do you think? So finally I bit the bullet last night and I wrote her an email saying, I know this sounds paranoid and strange, but getting into your film festival is a little bit of a pipe dream. And I hope you take this as a compliment, but can you verify or validate this in any way? Are you sure? Did we really get in?
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And she wrote back, with a smiley face saying, yes, you were an official selection. And then they sent me the filmmaker form that I'm filling out right now. So wow. That is really exciting. And then because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'm in development of another short because it's not a genre short, but I decided I'm going to do a short musical and really put my head and my heart behind it the way I did with Witchy. Because until I have a feature that's getting off the ground, it is real and is in front of me, I'm just going to find ways to make content over and over and over again. And so I'm very, very hungry to make another project. And so I'm making a one-take musical as well.
Wait, so how is the one-take musical being funded?
I have some ideas. So that guy I spoke with last week that I mentioned, his background is in musical theater. I'm going to approach him. I think there could be a world where I go back to my patron model that I did for Witchy and see if anyone else wants to come in and support the short, or I self-fund it. I basically I had a conversation with Jenny Waldo, filmmaker Jenny Waldo, about this. And it's like, I decide to do it and then I figure out how when it's too late. Like when you're already like committed to doing it and you're just like, I'm going to figure it out. So that's kind of what it is. And I met with the DP yesterday and I'm meeting with the writer today after this chat. And once I have a script, I'm going to reapproach that investor and say, if you want to get your toes wet, the best way to do it is with this short.
Well, okay, so why don't you like take that energy and like that potential investment and put it into one of the features? Like why not try to push one of them forward in that way rather than do another project that's like a side project to the features?
Well, it is somewhat of a proof of concept for the feature that I'm going to make in several years. It's the musical that I'm going to make. This like I've talked about it on the show before. It's kind of like the Eddie and the Cruisers Roadhouse type musical. And what I want to do is I was inspired by a conversation with Richard Leeds about one take scenes and concentrating on blocking and camera and kind of exercising that muscle. And so it's not a proof of concept in that I'm shooting like a trailer for this film. It's a proof of concept in that it's one musical number that is going to be written by the composers of the musical. It's going to be a script written by the writer of the musical. And I'm going to try to populate it with the 2 cast members I want to be in the feature as well. Mm. So for me, because I'm pretty sure the musical is going to be at least $500,000, this is the way I think will provide a level of commitment, traction, just momentum for this project. And I'm impatient. I just want to make something else. So I'm trying to do a twofer here.
Right. Okay. Well, I totally respect that idea of like using it as a proof of concept. And I think that's totally like smart to do that. Other thing I'm going to play devil's advocate and just push you on is like you spent all this time like, developing yourself as a genre filmmaker. You made a genre short, got into a genre film festival. Yeah. And now you're going to make a musical. It seems like not necessarily the best choice, like you should be doing a proof of concept for your genre feature, because that's the thing that people can like, they'll be able to put a connection and be like, okay, Liz is going in this direction. She had this great short that like got into this festival, hopefully wins some awards or whatever. And then she's going to do a proof of concept for her feature that she's going to make next. And it's like all kind of lined up perfectly in a way that works. But like pivoting towards a musical seems less intuitive of a choice.
Well, it's back to my advice to you. Why not do both? So now that I'm in Screamfest and I'm attached to this really cool Bloodlist script that I've been working on for, that the writer has been working on for years and years, but I've been attached to for about a year. We have a deck. We have the fact that I'm in Screamfest. We have a team that we're building. The script itself was on the Bloodlist, Screencraft page, and then I'm going to go to Screamfest. I'm going to say, I want to make Thin Blue Veins, right? So I already have the assets needed for that horror feature, I think. I don't think I need a proof of concept because I'm already putting a little bit I'm dipping my toes already in the genre world. But I don't want to be just a horror filmmaker. I want to be many different things.
A horror filmmaker.
Well, no, because I think the best directors work in multiple genres. And so I want to be a filmmaker. And so
you already work in multiple genres. You've made a drama and what'd you call the other one? A sci-fi drama?
A sci-fi and rom-com and a sci-fi / fantasy. And I haven't done a musical yet. So this is going to be my musical, Alrik.
Wow. Okay. I'm not trying to whatever, rain on your parade. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that you're doing all these things. I just, I guess it's not the way that I would go about it. But I don't think it's wrong.
What's so interesting. I didn't even think about this before I started talking, but I am chaos, right? I am weird chaos. I'm impulsive and I'm mercurial. And even though I give other filmmakers advice on strategy, I don't take that advice, right? I just follow the whims of my fancies or whatever. But you are being very specific in your career. And I think that's really, really smart. I don't know how to do that. I can't, it's not rewarding to me. What's rewarding is being really impulsive and following my whims.
Well, it didn't get me into Screamfest, so maybe the impulsive way is the better way. I don't know.
I don't think so. But everyone who's listening, don't forget to support us on Patreon. That's not a good segue, but I'm going with it. Patreon is how we make the show. It is every dollar actually, I'll be explicit again. It goes into Alrik's pocketbook to pay him back for the years and years and years of funding this show, for paying the editors, for putting everything together. So every cent is appreciated by us. If
it really just goes into the next episode because
we can't pay you back.
Already hemorrhaging from all the other episodes.
That's right. We never pay you back.
The future episodes, I don't have to hemorrhage. That's the hope, at least.
So keep the show going and donate, $1, $2, $10, whatever it is, to our Patreon campaign. www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. Check out jambox.io, which is a royalty-free music and SFX company with an emphasis on high-quality cinematic cues. They offer customized plans to fit your needs. And if you use the promo code MMIH, you can get a discount. I think it's 20% discount. So check it out. But without any more delay, here's our chat with Charla Lauriston.
Welcome to the show, Charla. Thanks so much for joining us today. Give us your 1-minute bio of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a Haitian American comedian and television writer and producer. And I'm also a mentor at the Working Writers School, which is an online course for new and aspiring screenwriters that teaches them more of the business side of screenwriting. That's pretty much me in a nutshell, I'd say.
That's like the shortest because it's jam-packed, but it was really efficient, just like your email to us.
I like to get right to the point. I feel like there's so much for us to read and do. Anyone who takes up too much of my time with just jibber jabber, warm up jibber jabber, I start to feel like it's rude. I truly feel like there's too much for us to pay attention to and look at, God,
I'm on the same page. Can you tell us a little bit about coming into TV writing? And then we'll get into your career as a mentor and
of course
facilitator. But tell us about TV writing.
Of course. How did I get in? I actually wasn't really trying to get into TV writing. And that's because I didn't know what I was doing. I was truly just going with my gut. I'm so Haitian. I'm such an immigrant. I came up in a household and a culture where I was supposed to be a nurse or a lawyer or a doctor or something that, is useful to society and, actually gets a regular income. And that's what I was supposed to do. I'd never seen anybody really get into the entertainment industry. I grew up mostly in Boston, Massachusetts. I was born in Haiti. I'm just so culturally outside of Hollywood that it just didn't even occur to me. But I had this gut feeling that I really wanted to perform. And mind you, I'm the most introverted, no one ever thought I was funny. I remember when I told my dad I was going to do comedy, he was just like, but you're not funny. And I just was like, that's the funniest thing anyone, that's why I'm doing it. Cause my dad is so funny. But it was just not in the cards for me, it truly was random, but I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. I had this gut feeling that I just really wanted to perform, that I really wanted to do this thing. I had these things that I wanted to put out into the world, and I just wanted to move to New York. So I just took the leap. I moved to New York. I started doing improv comedy. I went from improv to stand-up, and I saw that a lot of the people that I really looked up to at the time had started doing these things called web series. And I was like, I can do that. I have an idea. So I did that. I made one. It was terrible. And I hid it away where it belonged. And I never let anyone see it. And I learned a lot from it. And then I made a second one. And I loved that one. And I put that out. That was called Clench and Release. That came out, I think, in 2013. I'm so old. I hate it. It's the worst. And I think it came out in 2013. And I hustled my little booty off. I sent it to magazines that wrote about web series. I sent it to Black women websites or lady websites, comedy websites, anything that would be mildly interested in what I was doing. I sent it out, and that just putting that out there got me noticed by a manager. I was also doing stand-up. I was also producing a lot of stand-up shows. I was hustling my butt off, and it landed me in a meeting with a manager, and it simultaneously, separate of each other, separate of that manager reaching out, someone reached out to me to submit a script to a room. And that job ended up being Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And that ended up being my first writer's job. And it was just I truly was I don't know what I'm doing. It was really, really bad, honestly, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was aiming for. But I feel like being from so outside of the industry, I've learned so much. And I used to feel like I didn't really belong because I was so not really like understanding what the ladder is and what the trajectory is and, you know, what's all the hype about it. But, you know, I genuinely feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I'm grateful that I took the leap and did what I did, not knowing anything. And, you know, it was really dumb, but smart in the long run, I think. So that is how, in a nutshell, I became a TV writer, which is nuts. Yeah.
And what city were you doing all the stand-up comedy and everything in? What was that, in New York or in LA or?
That was in New York City, praise God. You know, thank God it wasn't in LA. Like, New York is absolutely the mecca for stand-up comedy. You know, it's the hardest place and the best place, I think, to start because everybody goes there. It has the best comics in the world. And it's no knock to LA. LA just isn't built to do what New York does in terms of allowing stand-ups to go from show to show, to bump into each other in the way it does. It's just physically the physical environment of LA because you're in your car, because things close a little bit earlier, because it's more industry and there's like just slightly less artistic freedom and comfort on stage to try new things. It's just literally the physical environment of LA, I think, is not as conducive to stand-up. So I started in New York and I'm so glad I did because I think it helped get me to wherever I was going much faster.
And what was your job in your first writer's room? Was it like an assistant? Like, and what was that experience like and how, because you obviously were very successful at it because it led to more writers' rooms and more writing credits. Like, what were some of the things that you did that you thought like kind of made that a positive experience for you?
Yeah, it was actually not a positive experience. I didn't do a good job and it was really, really hard. And it's one of the reasons why I started the Working Writers School because I actually come from a political background. I have a politics background. I used to work for Senator Gillibrand in New York. I was a staff assistant for her and I interned for the Congressional Black Caucus. Like, so I just was doing different things. I really, truly came from outside of the industry and I just did not know what I didn't know. And when I got into my first room, I couldn't believe, like, I did not know that no one trains you. You just are plopped in there and then you're just expected to know what's going on. I truly was nuts. I was so like confident. I was like, bitch, I just got into this room. I was like, I'm so good. I got into this room. And I think that like that overconfidence and that complete lack of preparation and just zero knowledge of what my job was, you know, and also, you know, rooms are Hollywood is difficult. Rooms are notoriously hard. There are no real standards in terms of how people treat you. And there's no real standards in terms of I would just say that there are no standards, period. You could go, I've been in at least 7 different writers' rooms and every single one of them has been absolutely different. And it's mostly based off of the showrunner and the culture that they create and the kind of, you know, hours that they want to do. Everything about the way that the room works is based off of the showrunner and who they are and how they work. So you really have no real consistency and no real ability to determine, you know, I mean, obviously there are things that are always going to be the same, but I would just say that I did very, very poorly. I was extremely unprepared. If it's sink or swim, I was sinking. I had horrible imposter syndrome, which was ridiculous because I just needed information. You know, I just needed information. And there was this feeling that I couldn't ask. There was this feeling that I was scared to ask. There was this feeling that I was supposed to know. And that's not the situation for a lot of writers, because, you know, a lot of writers in writers' rooms have been in screenwriting courses forever. I was much more of a performer. I was much more of a stand-up. I made web series. I wasn't someone who had like a bunch of scripts, who had written a bunch of scripts and had been applying to, you know, festivals and competitions and all these other things. I was much more of a creator and a performer. So I was not prepared and I really struggled. It was really bad. So
I'm trying to get the sense of you as a writer in terms of like you just said, I got what you said about how you didn't have a lot of scripts like in your back pocket that you'd written, but it's incredibly hard to get into a room. So you got into the room. Was it on the basis of you I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I got into the room because I had...
Are you reading my mind? What just happened?
I think you asked me the question the first time and I just didn't answer it. And now I think I got into the room because I think a clear voice is really important in the room, and you're really hired for your point of view, your POV, your ability to express that POV. The more interesting, the more original, the more, I would say, originality is super important. And I tried to put that into my web series. I'm almost certain that my web series has gotten me pretty much every job, at least in the beginning. Like, it definitely got me every job because it was a 5-minute clip that somebody could watch and be like, oh, that's funny. I get her voice. Great. Like, I want that voice. That's really, it was really that, I think.
No, that did answer my question. Thank you.
So if it went so terribly and you sunk so badly, like, how did you get your next job? Like, what was how did you turn that into a positive thing?
You know, I really don't think these people talk to each other. That's what I mean. I don't know. I'm like, if you had asked that first person, I don't think they would have hired me. So I don't think anybody talks to each other. And the thing is, that's another dirty secret nobody talks about, is a lot of people get fired or don't get asked back to their second job. A lot of people don't go back. Sometimes it's not a great environment for everyone. I want that environment to be more consistently. I want the culture of TV writing to be more inclusive, and it currently is not in its current state. You know, a lot of things have been going on to make it better, to make it more sustainable of a career for people and make it more inclusive, but it's just not there yet. So I think that that's one thing. That's one of the things, is that there's just not a lot of sharing of knowledge of what the experience is like for real. And and people, I know so many people who got fired from their first room. They're so ashamed. They feel like their career is over. And what they don't know is that, I don't know if everybody's talking to each other, you know, and people don't want to, you know, cut off your career just because you weren't a fit for that particular writer's room. You know, like, you might be a better fit for another writer's room, and that's better for you. So basically, my work that I had done, because I continued to put out work, I continued to do stand-up, it didn't mean that I'm not a good writer or I'm not a good person to have in a writer's room. And also, after you get your first writer's room experience, you're much more likely to get your second one, because people don't like to take a chance on a first-time staff writer. They'd much rather take a chance on someone who has a credit. That first job, I think, is really the hardest one to get. I would say the first and the second job are probably harder to get than after that. But yeah, I guess nobody talked to each other, so that's really it.
Did you
sorry, Liz. I don't know if you're going to ask the same question I'm going to ask, but like, was it your manager who like put you up for your second job, or like, how did they find?
Yeah,
like,
that's a great question. Yeah, so how it works, that's another thing nobody's tells you, is that after you get your, not even after you get your first job, after you get repped, you know, your manager or your agent really wants to put you out. It's like a quinceañera, or you might call it an what do you call it in the South? A cotillion. When you come out, it's your coming out.
Yeah, debutante ball,
your
right?
Debutante ball. So you go around to all of these general meetings. So, you know, when I first got repped, I met with Comedy Central. I met with, I'm trying to remember the places at the time that were really hiring stand-up comedians in New York in particular. Viacom. Viacom is Comedy Central. Basically, imagine networks. And like, you go around to meet with the executives at these networks, and these executives are the people who are responsible for bringing new artists, new voices, who eventually might pitch the TV shows that they eventually might put on TV. And these new artists are also the same people that they might be hiring for staffing when those TV shows do get greenlit. So essentially, I've been on dozens of general meetings at HBO, at Hulu, at other networks. I can't think of networks right now, you know, Netflix, at whatever. And like, you basically get ushered into the hiring pool, essentially. Like, when you are, you know, considered for these jobs, you get put into the hiring pool, and all of these people meet you, all of these executives meet you, and they really want to have a good relationship with you, because you are potentially somebody that they might want to hire. You're potentially somebody that might bring them their next hit show. You know, they have bosses to answer to that are looking for the next show. And the people, TV writers' rooms are really incubators for future TV shows, as you know, because a lot of TV shows come from writers who have been in previous writers' rooms, etc. So it kind of works like that. It's actually like very much like a company town in terms of like there's actual structures and procedures to becoming a TV writer that nobody really talks about, and that's one of them. So that's a really great question about like, yeah, that is how I got my next job. I had a general at Comedy Central. And when they were hiring for another show, they asked me to come in, and they liked me because they like my voice. They like my personality. They can see me as somebody that they would like to have in a room. There also weren't a lot of women doing it that much when I first started, honestly. There were not a lot of stand-up comics that were ladies. There were much more, after I started. But I started around that time where there just weren't that many. So I would also say that I was unique in that sense. So I had a meeting with Comedy Central long before I had that first staff job, that first writer's room job. When that job ended, I got another call from the people that I had met asking if I was interested in meeting on this particular show. I met on for that particular show. And by meeting, it means you either meet the showrunner, you meet the creator, or you meet both as well as producers. It can be any kind of type of meeting, but they also liked me and they hired me. And that's it. They didn't really communicate. Did she do good on that first one? No one asked, I don't think. So, I got a shot to get better, which I think most people do. Most people don't realize that, like, you're not going to get canned because you weren't great. You still contributed. People know that you're a new staff writer. It's really about your POV and what you bring in terms of your life experience, the way that you see things, what you can bring to this show to help the showrunner make the show the best it can be.
We aren't talking about one side of this whole experience, which is like the process of writing these episodic scripts. I mean, like, yeah. I know you came from the world of comedy and I know you're a creator. You talked about the amazing web series, but like, I find the concept of writing very intimidating. And I'd just be curious, like, is it just something you just have a love for and you took naturally to it? Or how did you go from writing for yourself to writing in a room? And yeah, just tell me about the process.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was really lucky in the sense that I got to learn at the absolute highest level, which was why it was so difficult that first year. But it's not easier in a group setting. It's not about like love or whatever like people talk about. It's not about that. It's just hard. It's truly just a bunch of neurotic people in a room trying to make this as clear and funny as possible. And there are steps to it. The first week in a writer's room is called the blue sky period, where you're really just talking about, if it's the first season, you're talking about, what are the episodes in this season? What other characters can we bring into this world? What emotional arcs are we seeing? What story arcs are we seeing? Like, we're really just talking generally about what the show could be. And then we get more granular as the weeks wear on. We're getting down to breaking story. We're getting down to outlining. We're getting down to sending people off to flesh out an outline. We're sending people off to like actually flesh out a script. But for the vast majority of rooms I've been in we've done all of this collaboratively. There hasn't been like, you're in charge of one story, one script. It's truly been a very collaborative process. So I would say that, like, yes, I knew the structure of a script before I walked in. I just didn't have as many reps in as some other people. And I just was really ignorant of the industry in general. I just did not know what I was getting into. But that doesn't mean that there's any kind of, I guess, unreasonable training that you need to have. I think the best training to be in a writer's room is just to take a screenwriting class. Like, take a screenwriting class. The structure. I also think there's other things to learn that are important, but in terms of the writing, like, that is the most important thing to come in having.
So you're talking about how it's like a really collaborative process, especially in the rooms that you've been in.
Yeah.
So if it's so collaborative, like, how do you guys decide who gets the writing credit on any given episode? Like, what's that process like?
Well, I would say it's collaborative in the sense that like the showrunner we're all coming up with things, but the showrunner is still the judge and jury. Like it's up to them, and it is their responsibility to have a clear sense of what the show is so that they can filter all of the pitches from the writers in the room to make sure that like they're getting what they want at the end of this process. What did you say, Arlik? What was your question?
How does so you're talking about it being collaborative. Like, how do the writers get picked on who's writing any given episode?
Yes, a lot of times it's just by seniority. You know, like maybe if you get hired as a staff writer, you're not always guaranteed a script. You know, those showrunners that really are invested in helping writers move their careers along will try to make sure that even the staff writer gets a script. Sometimes even the writer's assistant hopefully will get a credit on a script so that helps their career along. But that's really what it is. It's like, it's seniority. We have 10 episodes, we have 10 writers. If there's more writers than episodes, you might have to share a script. At least that's how it's been in the rooms that I've been in. It's truly just, are you at a level where your contract guarantees you a script? And if you're not, are you in a room where the showrunner really wants to make sure that people get credit? Because getting credit also means that you get, what do you call it? I was going to say royalties. Oh my God. Where you get, what is the word? Where you get, what is the word, guys?
Is it not royalties? I was thinking it was royalties.
No, it's not royalties.
Is it like a fee? Like, is it just an individual fee?
You get a script fee. Yeah, you get a script fee, as well as, I can't remember the word, but I'll remember it. I think sometimes I can't remember random words, but yeah, so getting a credit on a script is you get a script fee as well as ongoing royalties, which is the word that we're going to use. And it just helps you along because now you have a credit instead of nothing.
So I want to talk about this course you've created, right, to help other writers. But part of that or a core of that seems to be some sort of interplay between mindfulness, confidence, and productivity. That seems to be what you're pitching. And I think it was in your bio, you talked a little bit about anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about how those things all interact and then we can lead into your course through that if that's helpful?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, the anxiety piece came because I am an anxious person, but I've noticed that there is a lot of anxiety in Hollywood and it's not coming out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, we have reasons to be anxious in Hollywood for a lot of reasons because, there can just be a lot of situations where it feels like we don't have access or we don't have information that other people might have. I think it's really important. I think a lot of my anxiety came from not knowing what my job is, not knowing, not just in the room, but what is my job now as a TV writer? What is my job now? Like, what does my career look like? I struggled to find mentors. Whenever I had issues with my manager, I didn't know who to talk to because I can't talk to my manager about it. I'm having issues with that person. And, it just was really difficult to get a sense of confidence in myself in terms of like, I know what I'm doing. And then on top of that, I'm already an anxious person. And on top of that, I already, have a lot of confidence issues, which, a lot of us do. But I think that it really makes a difference when you are walking into these rooms, when you are walking into these meetings, when you're walking into these pitches with a sense of, I know what I'm doing and I'm confident in what I'm doing. It changes the entire situation. And I also feel like mindfulness, because we're in such an uncertain industry, because it can a lot of times feel like feast or famine. It can be so competitive. You're only as good as your last project. There's so many things that, eat away at your mental stability and your feeling of certainty and security, which I think are things that we need just normally, just to live, just to exist. And I think those things are particularly hard in this industry. And just also a sense of community, feeling like there is a place where you can go and ask these questions, and there is a place to go learn these things. And also, I have so many opinions about this. I don't like that there is, this decentralization of information about this particular job, about being a TV writer. The questions that you guys are asking, to me, I feel like should be basic should be everywhere, should be things that everyone has access to know what their job is. And I think it's something that will make the job of TV writing better and make TV writers happier. I think it'll make the job more sustainable. And I think it'll create better culture inside of writers' rooms. It'll just make for a better experience as a TV writer, because it can be a great experience, but it can also be difficult in so many unnecessary ways. And I think the number one reason is just a lack of information, a lack of community, a lack of mentorship. And I think it's not necessary. I think it's like, because I've had such a difficult time not knowing where to find a mentor, not knowing if I'm doing good, what my job is, what is the trajectory, what are my next steps? Like, it really led to a terrible burnout, honestly. And coming out of that burnout, this course is really what came out of that burnout, of me just being like, I need to have a different way to relate to this. And I need to tell people, I need to warn people. Sorry, I'm just joking. I need to educate and encourage and uplift and make people feel like it is accessible to them. This information is accessible, that there is a path, that you can create it. It's not closed off to you. You're good enough. You can be a writer and you can thrive in this career. But that's really what it is. It's really just me. I had a hard time, and I think that it was unnecessary. And I think that it created a lot of unnecessary pain and struggle and wasted time. And it's just here's the information, here's the mentorship, here's the community. These are the things that I think that you need to be successful. And I want to make it accessible to people. Yeah,
you're the third TV writer we've had on the show, I think. And everyone before that has talked about different aspects of TV writing and talked about it in a completely different way, because what you're saying about writers' rooms being so different, they're all different. So it's kind of hard to get a real grasp of what it is. Another thing, we had a TV agent on the show, and we kept on asking so what do you look for? Yeah. In a writer, what are you looking for as somebody who's staffing up in a room? And he kept on talking about it being the best dinner party guest, the person who can mingle and talk and be a part of the best dinner party you could imagine. That's the person they want. And do you feel like that's accurate? Is that a true thing, or is that kind of stupid? How do you see that?
I do feel it is stupid, but it is a true thing. It is a true thing. A lot of the times, I definitely think there's an advantage to being a performer, to being a comedian. There's tons of other kinds of people in rooms, but ultimately you're in the room with about 8 to 10 people for 5 months, usually on average. Because I'm in a half-hour comedy space, our rooms tend to be about 20 weeks, so about 5 months. So it can be, imagine if these people are not good-natured, if they're not people who are good communicators, if they're not people who are sharp, if they're not people who are confident, if they're not people who have a clear POV, a clear way of seeing the world, which is one way that I talk about originality a lot in the course. And that's really what it is. It's truly just being yourself. It is sharing your perspective comfortably, confidently with a room of people, because we do ultimately have to be comrades. We have to, it just requires, writers' rooms, the way that they are set up just requires that. And that is genuinely what showrunners are looking for, and producers, because if you're meeting with them, then they've already read your script or your short story, or they've seen your short, or whatever it is that got you into the room. They've already determined that you have enough skill set to be in the writer's room. That meeting is really to see, do they like you? Can they stand you? All right, what are you going to be like for 4 or 5 months? What is it going to be like to be with you in a room? I think it's more than that, but ultimately I think it's really filmmaking is hard. TV is hard. It's intensive. It's, time intensive. It's mentally and emotionally draining because of just coming up with so many ideas and doing rewrites and all of that stuff, and just being around people. Some of us are really introverted and they can take out a lot of energy. So you really want to find people who are, I guess, emotionally and personality-wise up for the job.
Well, I want to go back to kind of the squishy topic of like your experience and living in fear and mindfulness, because again, I read like the details of your course, which sounds wonderful. And it was reinforced by your pitch, really. But you said something like 10 years ago, you stopped living in fear. And I'm just like, how do you do that? What do you tell me how to do that? Can you tell me now?
I don't think I said that on. I don't know what.
Oh my God. I've decided that you said that and have put it in the public forum for you. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not sure what I said, but it really was just making mistakes. And I don't know about you guys, but I just come from a mindset of we can't make mistakes, we can't fail, we can't do anything bad, or else we're bad and that's the end of it. And there's essentially no real way to learn outside of making mistakes, outside of failing. And I genuinely don't know if I said this on my
I'm going to find it now, and it's going to be like, my name is Charla. It's going to be like something very different from what I'm claiming it is.
Like, really? Because I'm like, fear is definitely a part of the process forever. I don't know about you, but...
No, but I will find it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, while you're looking that up, Liz, can you just talk about like, because mindfulness is one of your 3 things. Like to me, that just means like being respectful of others and being aware of your surroundings and interacting with people. But is that what it is, or is there something more to mindfulness that's important?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question, Alrik. I'm glad you asked that, because even I was like, what's the big deal? What do I need this for? And I started with Headspace, that app that gives you like 10 minutes or 5 minutes free or whatever. I started with that. And, as someone who is introverted, as someone who has struggled with anxiety, I didn't understand how little control I had over my mind. And mindfulness gave me the understanding that I do have control over my mind. And I think as a writer, as a filmmaker, as creatives, our minds are our greatest asset. Your mind is what allows you to create. It's what you need, a certain level of focus to create what you want to create. You need a certain level of mental clarity if you want to do what you want to do. And sometimes for some of us, our mind is our greatest, opponent. It's our greatest obstacle. And what mindfulness started to do when I started to meditate for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, very inconsistently, didn't know what I was doing, didn't understand the importance of it. What starts to happen is you start to recognize that there is distance between you and your thoughts, that you are not your thoughts. And I think that differentiation is really the foundation of mindfulness. It's really the understanding that like, I can choose to engage with this thought, I can choose not to. I can choose to bring myself back to the present moment. I can choose to calm my emotional state. I can choose to focus on the present moment. I can choose to not believe this thought. Ultimately, you have a choice. You are in control of your mind. You have agency. You have control, because so much of what anxiety is feeling out of control. Like you don't have any control, but you do have control. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. But even starting to meditate a little bit, even getting a little bit of distance creates so much more internal freedom and like relaxation, a feeling of, I think for me, most important is agency, like just feeling like I have some control over my thoughts, over how they're making me feel, over whether or not I choose to interact with them. So I think that's really what it is.
I love that. I found it, and I twisted your words a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So it said, a decade ago, I decided to stop living in fear of what I couldn't do and start working towards what I wanted.
Yes.
I wanted to know if there was like a moment that switched that on.
I talk about this in a post on the blog as well. I talk about how I became a TV writer, and I'm not actually sure if I really go into it. Maybe one day I'll like really write out like what the situation was. But ultimately, there was a moment. There was a moment where it's really dumb. I got into like a little baby mini accident. It was not a serious accident at all. Like looking back at the time, I was like, oh God, I almost died. I was going to die, but I wasn't going to die. There was nobody else on the street. I just almost missed my exit and I swerved to make it, and we were fine and no one was around us and it was fine. But before that, I had been desperately wanting to leave my job. Hating my job, not even just hating my job, but just like wanting to do something. I wanted to go to New York and try stand up And I didn't tell anybody about it because I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever thought or felt. But it didn't matter. The point of the matter was I was afraid and I was making my choice out of fear, not out of actual facts and information about whether or not I was able to do this thing. So after I had that little baby experience, it was a little baby near-death experience that made me be like, hey, if I actually think about the fact that, hey, life is really short and I don't have to, I'm 24 at the time, everybody has different circumstances, but my circumstances led themselves to me being able to do this, take this big risk. Even though before that little baby near death experience, I thought I couldn't, but I could, and I always could. I just needed something to wake me up to the fact that I'm operating out of fear. I'm not actually operating out of information, facts, and confidence, and, a desire to live the way that I actually want to live, and not just because I'm afraid of failing.
Awesome. I wanted to ask, and you may not have the answer to this question, but
I have all the answers already.
Oh, good. Yeah. I love it. So what is the goal? What is the trajectory of your career as a writer? Is it just to become a showrunner and have your own show? Is that the ultimate goal? Or is there another goal that you have in mind, in your career as a TV writer? Or are there other things that you could aspire to besides just getting to the position where you are, show running or, the creator of your own show?
I really love that question. And it's because I've been struggling with it lately. What is my goal? What is the point? Why are we doing this, Because one of the things that I learned after I got to the things that I wanted to get to and I reached the goals that I wanted to get to, I realized that those things did not fulfill me. Those things ultimately did not validate me. They didn't squelch or they didn't take the insecurities away. They didn't take the fears away. So after I learned that, reaching milestones and goals are excellent. They are amazing for feeling happy temporarily in terms of progress. We need them. They're great. And I do want to create my own show. I do want to show run. I do want to make good things that people like enough, But what I'm really starting to notice is that the things that really matter to me are creating community and connection, because that's one of the things that I feel like sometimes is really lacking. And I think it particularly in this time post-COVID, while we're in this period in our country that we've kind of always been in, but we're at the peak, I feel like it's really important right now for it to be about more than, oh, I want to run a show, which is cool. And I actually believe very much that I'll get there because I'm on that trajectory. I can see myself becoming not doing anything, just continuing to work in rooms and eventually becoming a showrunner, hopefully a good one. But more than that, it's I really want to give to people what I didn't have when I first started in this industry. And that is community, that is information and knowledge, that's mentorship. That's encouragement, telling people you can do it. And, you might not reach it because it's super competitive and there's only so many jobs and things like that. You should be hungry and, all those good things that you tell people. But ultimately, I think I'm also at the point where I don't need to know so much as I used to. I used to really need to know where am I going and what am I doing. And now I'm a little bit more this is where I am. This is what I think would be really fulfilling to me in the moment, would be to be to give this to people and share this with people. And hopefully it helps people. So yeah, I think maybe it'll change in the future. But right now, that's what it is.
I think it's time for final six, but Alrik, do you have a last question?
I did. I was going to think about it while you asked your question.
Oh, no. But, I'm just going to keep on talking like this about life. And did it come to you yet?
Okay, here's what it is. Yes. So yeah. When you became a TV writer, was it this thing where it's cha-ching, I made it. I got totally taken care of. I don't have to worry about my next, well, I guess you're worrying about your next job, but I guess was it a financially positive move
100%. 100%. Yes and no. I'll say that. Yes, cha-ching. I was so broke. I bought sheets. I bought boots. I bought things that I genuinely needed that I was too broke to afford before I got that job. 100%. I did rest on my laurels a little bit. I was like, boom, I'm done. I got it. No more. I don't have to hustle anymore, which was a total lie and not true. And like just the worst thing that I could have thought. Truly, I did not know what I was doing. And it was temporarily a good financial situation. But because I did not have basic financial education, that money went away eventually. I mean, I did pretty good with it. Like I paid off. I'd never been a big credit card spender. I didn't have a lot on my credit card. I did have a ton of student loans and I paid off some of that when I got that job and stuff. But I didn't really understand how to set financial goals. I didn't have real financial knowledge and education. And that's another thing that I teach in the course because I think it's so important for creatives to know is that you need to have basic financial knowledge of how to manage your money. So that is something that is also taught so that you can go on and flourish and not have to worry about, oh, was I supposed to do something smarter with this money? It's like, yeah, I'll tell you what you're supposed to do.
All right, last question. So, and this is like because like everybody that we've heard who like, gets representation, gets like, into a writer's room or whatever, like it's always a different story, completely different. So like if you're like a writer who's like, they're working on their pilot, they're working on their samples, they really want to get rep, they really want to get in a writer's room. Like what are some things those people can be doing to like help their chances? Or is it really like they just have to have like a fluke happen and that's it?
No, I don't think it's a fluke that has to happen. I think that's another good question. Working on your samples, working on your writing is excellent because you absolutely need to know how to write a script when you walk into a writer's room. No one's going to teach you. No one's going to sit down and hold your hand and explain it. Like you need to walk in knowing how to outline, knowing how to do a beat sheet, knowing how to write out a script, knowing the structure of a script. You need to know those things. I think it's about making things and meeting people. If those are two things that you can do, make things and meet people. Absolutely. Because the more you make things, the better your skills get, whether you're making films, whether you're making scripts, whatever it is, like you need to be highly skilled to get into a writer's room. Whether that is writing jokes, like if you're highly skilled at writing jokes, and that's the other thing, you don't have to be good at everything to be in a writer's room. Sometimes they hire you because you're a good joke writer, because you're funny. Sometimes they hire you because you're a good story person. Sometimes you're a great character person. You don't have to be like the full package. That's why it's a room. That's why it's a group effort. I also think, you have to put your stuff out there. A lot of people will write and put it in a drawer and then never put it anywhere. And they don't know why they're not getting anywhere. It's like, you got to put your stuff out there. You have to get feedback from the world about what you're doing so that you have a sense of what your skill level is. How do you compare to other people? How original are you? That's the other thing. It's like people want to. Originality is really just about who you are and where you come from, and can you distill that in your writing by being your original self. And you have to, of course, meet people. You have to be out and about. You have to whether it is me personally, I come up from the comedy community in New York, and so many of the people that I started with are working regularly in TV right now because that is a breeding ground. It's like that is where a lot of execs, managers, agents, they're looking for TV people in the comedy community, whether it's writers or performers. So that's a great place to be and meet people and be seen and get your work out there. I feel like there's so many competitions. There's just so many ways to get out there. But I think it's make things, meet people, get out there. You just got to get out there.
All right. You're almost done, Charla. What is the first script you've ever written and how do you feel about it now?
The first script I ever wrote was for my web series, and it was the one that was never shared. And I think it was terrible. I still feel like it was terrible. I don't ever want anyone to see it or know about it. And no, that's not true, actually. I actually think it's, it's good to see how far I've come in terms of my writing, my ability to clearly express my ideas, and my ability to craft characters that feel alive and that say funny things and craft a cohesive story. None of those things were happening in that first script. So I guess I feel like, thank God it's over. Thank God I'm past it.
And what's the best writing advice you've ever received?
Write like you talk. Whenever I'm reading a script, if it doesn't read like I can't hear that a human being's voice, like it doesn't feel like a good script. And if I'm writing a script and I'm reading it and it doesn't feel like a human being would say this, then it doesn't feel like a good script.
What's the worst writing advice you've ever received or heard or witnessed or whatever?
I don't know if there's like the worst. I mean, I guess anytime an exec has asked me to like explain anything in a script, that's always super annoying. You don't want to be too explainy. But that's like a classic exec note. Explain this. It's like, all right, clearly I need to make this clearer, because the last thing I want to do is like have people taking out a calculator to understand a scene. So,
do you have a goal as a writer?
My goal as a writer is I still have a feature in my head that I've never written, that I've attempted and failed and run away from, that I still have to write. So right now, my goal as a writer is to get that feature decent.
If you could go back in time and issue yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, you belong here, and just ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
And last question, is making TV or movies hard?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For reasons that are unnecessary and for reasons that are just are natural to the beast of filmmaking. It just is a beast. I think there are simple ways to do it. I think, making sure to have good, competent people that you like being around, that you trust, whose work you like, I think helps a lot. And I think that it doesn't always have to cost as much as people assume. There's definitely ways to do it super cheap. I always do it super cheap, but I also do it like kind of like illegal ways. So I don't always recommend it, but it is hard. It is hard. It's fun. Sorry, wait, it's fun.
Yeah. Go on with that. You could keep talking about fun.
It's fun. You made a thing. You liked it. That's good.
How can people sign up for your course, support you, check out what you do?
Absolutely. You can check out the Working Writer blog, and I spell working with WERK. So it's theworkingwriter.com. And the course is right there on the website. You can just click the Working Writer School. It's right there on the blog. And it's really just a resource. There's only a few posts up so far. This is the first online cohort. Like, I did a small group privately before I put this out. So this is the first cohort. It starts July 11th, and you can apply, because I just want to make sure that the people who are applying are people who are actively already looking to be screenwriters, not people who just decided today that they want to write a script. So I want people who are actively working towards it. You don't need to have a script, because I, was a performer. So if you're a performer, but you're actively working towards being a screenwriter, this is what I think is really necessary, which is the training that you need, the knowledge that you need, and the community and mentorship that you need, I think, to have a thriving career, so that you can come in knowing exactly what your job is inside and outside of the writer's room, because your job does not end just because a room ends. Now you have other things to do. So it's really just the training that I think is necessary that screenwriting courses don't offer. This is not a screenwriting course because there are so many of them. This is the course that teaches you everything else that you need.
Alrik, what do you remember about our chat with Charla yesterday that we had yesterday? What do you remember about that?
I remember that I was surprised that she had such a hard time in her first writer's room, that it was not a positive experience, because you assume if someone's going to build a career and have the success that she has had, that it all has to go well. Like everything has to be a positive thing in order for you to continue, or your career doesn't continue. But it was so interesting to hear about how that's not the case most of the time. That like, you know, you're not necessarily being rated from your last job to your next job. It's like all about the connection you make with the people in the room. And then, you know, she explained the whole like going on generals thing, which we've heard a lot of times, but how like, you know, her next job didn't come from her last job. It came from the first round of generals she did before she got her actual first job. So I think that was the part that really kind of blew my mind wide open and was really interesting just to hear like how that works and how it's not really a perfect system, obviously. How it's like such a wild, it's a wild world that I wish I was a part of, but I kind of know I will never necessarily be a part of that world. At least not, like I can't imagine ever being in a writer's room. Like I don't live in Los Angeles or New York, and I don't have plans to move anytime soon. So it's like, this is not going to be part of my career, and that's fine. I kind of wish it would be. It's, you know, but anyways, it's just fascinating, and I had a lot of fun talking to her. But what about you, Liz? What did you take away?
I remember being annoyed that the theory with regard to dinner party guests was validated by her in some way. So I remember we interviewed that TV lit agent, and he said, the way I bring on my clients is I try to curate the world's best dinner party. And then you asked her that question, which was so great that you did, and just being so upset that there's no even attempt at meritocracy, right? There's no even real attempt. I mean, I guess the writing sample gets you into the pile, and then from the pile, your personality pushes you into the opportunity, which is such a shame because maybe you just have like a bad day. You're meeting that person, or you didn't drink enough water, or you drank too much water, or your iron is low, and you're just not funny. That like it just seems like it's a lot of pressure on that first meeting. But I think I said to you after we chatted, like, I get why she's hired. I mean, in addition to, I'm sure, her abundance of talent, there's just something incredibly likable about her where I would like really want to work with her. So, I mean, it benefits, the right people sometimes. But man, I wish there was a better way to hire people than based on their personality.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like most jobs, though, there's at least a little bit of personality that comes into you're getting hired or not, right? Like, you have to be a team player. You have to be able to get along with others. You've got to be fun, in some way. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be that fun, like, hey, I'm a party person. But you just have to be, like, pleasant and respectful and kind. And, if you can tell a joke or at least laugh at a joke, that's good, it's extra. But it was a really great conversation. I really want to take her class. I don't think I can afford it. At least I can't justify paying that kind of money for this kind of course, but I really want to. I
didn't know that you like writing so much. Like, that's what's coming out of this episode, I think.
I need to write more. That's my problem, is that I don't write enough. Like, I really want to be more of a writer. It's just not what I focus on. And I don't know. It's probably not even the right course for me to take. Because like the whole course is like, you've got the writing down. Like, you've got the scripts, you've got the thing, now everything else. Right. And it's like, I don't even have the writing down yet. I just want to learn everything else.
I think that's the hardest. I mean, like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine writing every day with a group of people. That sounds so difficult. Doesn't that sound so hard?
Well, that sounds like more fun. Like, I could be in a room talking about an idea forever. Like, you put me, like you give me a script to read, or you give me like a concept, or I'd love to work that kind of stuff out. But like actually sitting down to write it is like not necessarily my strength. Yeah. That's why I think I might be good in a writer's room, because like I think I could like provide ideas, opinions. Like, I don't think that's a great idea. I think it's a terrible idea. Oh, I think that's a great idea. Like, I think I could be that person, and I don't have any problem like, speaking out, That would probably be my strength in the room, but like my weakness would be like the ability to just crank out something really fast. Like, I would be like, oh God.
Yeah, that seems really, really difficult. I think I'd have a really hard time with that too.
Yeah. But talking about someone who's had difficulties, but not so much lately, we've got a news story about our boy Bradley Cooper, or the Coops as I like to call him, which I'm sure he's heard before and maybe he hates, who knows. There's an article. This is actually in all the trades. I saw this on IndieWire. I saw this on No Film School. I'm just going with the No Film School one. But it's an article about how Bradley Cooper was made fun of by some of Hollywood's elite over, his previous Oscar nominations. And he tells 2 stories about one, he got 6 nominations and he's standing next to somebody else who has 3. And some famous person is like, oh, I can't believe, you have 6 and she only has 3. How could that possibly be? It's so funny because in my mind, it's something where you can see it was supposed to be a compliment to her or to the other person, but it's actually just a complete underhanded slam on Cooper, and it's just really mean that people would do shit like that. And then the other one, which was oh, congratulations on the nom. Oh yeah, leaning into that, oh, you'll never win, but you got the nomination. Congratulations. Just whoa, what? I mean, people must be so insecure, man, if they have to shit on someone who's having success if they're not having it in that exact moment. It's holy moly. But anyways, what do you think of this article, Liz?
Oh my, I have a lot of different disparate reactions to it, because one reaction is, wow, this Bradley Cooper seems really petty. People were, there could be a world where that person was really congratulations on the nomination, Bradley. That's a bit they could have been thrilled and filled with joy. Who knows what his mind twisted into a passive aggressive comment. I am not convinced that really people are out to get Bradley Cooper. And that was my first inclination, is this is very silly. I think he's reading the room wrong. But I do remember when A Star Is Born came out, which I really loved. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, me too. Bradley Cooper, you did a good job.
Yeah, but I think that kind of type of star, director, producer, kind of we've talked about it before, the Clint Eastwood, the Mel Gibsons, the Kevin Costners. I think Hollywood doesn't want that anymore. I think there's just a real pushback against a certain type of that I think it seems to be an exclusively white male problem that they're upset with. And I think that's what, maybe if there's any tension, I think it's tension towards the idea that he's this boy wonder. But do you remember that clip that used to go around all the time of Bradley Cooper at the actor's studio getting to ask Robert De Niro question? Yeah, it was Robert De Niro question. And just that guy has stars in his eyes from the very beginning of his career, right? His ambition has no boundaries. I think that's cool. I respect the guy. I think he's incredibly talented. But I think with that comes with a massive ego. And I think this is the ramblings of an out of control, egotistical person. That's what this sounds like. Paranoia is what it sounds like to me.
That's interesting. I feel that's one way you could read it. You could also read it he's speaking the truth and no one speaks. The way that people, throw shade on each other. He's one of them was he was meeting one of his heroes, and then, he felt like his hero was belittling him, for no reason. But he got
to meet his hero. You know what I mean? And his hero's aware of his work. I can't believe I'm the Pollyanna in this scenario. That's weird for me.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I feel like the way that he said some of the stuff, in the article, was cool your jets, bruh. You don't need to be angry and upset about, you don't have to throw F-bombs into the situation. You can be the bigger person if they're being a shithead,
Right.
And it's I don't necessarily know if I got that from him. It seemed more like I got an aggressive response.
Yeah.
Not that I think he said anything in person in the moment, but even reliving it years later, it's you could just be the bigger man here and not have to get so upset about it. I think it's not cool, but I don't know. It's all in the tone, right? It's all, it's you could be oh, that was fucked up. It's okay. Or oh, that motherfucker. It's those two very different kind of energies. So I'm a hopelessly optimistic person. So I'm just going to think that, Bradley Cooper is a down to earth person, and he's just calling, the shit out on people who are being egomaniacs and letting their insecurities and their asses show in these situations, and that he's not what you describe, this out of control, egomaniacal maniac, because that is definitely a possibility. But I would rather think, and in my mind, see Bradley Cooper as this hardworking, down to earth person who made it big and, got to do all the things he wanted to do and is living his dream fulfilling his filmmaking and acting dream. You know, that's the way I'd like to look at it.
Well, okay, so I did a little sleuthing on the internet, very minor, and there are different theories on who the woman is who got less nominations than Bradley Cooper is. I mean, actually, everyone thinks that woman is Meryl Streep, by the way.
Oh.
And so for me, it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, you're going to be upset about Meryl Streep not getting every award in the world. Meryl Streep is a saint. Meryl Streep is just I don't know. I'm going to think Meryl Streep is better than Bradley Cooper, so we should all bow down to Meryl Streep. But there are different theories about the director, and I think a lot of people think it's Quentin Tarantino, and a few people think it's Ridley Scott as the person who kind of made that comment about Bradley Cooper. So I don't know what that means, and none of it is validated. But come on, you're not going to like say Meryl Streep deserves 45 million nominations for just walking outside of her door. I think she does.
Yeah, she's great. Everyone loves Meryl Streep.
Right.
She's a fantastic actor. Like, you know, who could say different? You know, like, especially the range of things she has done
Oh my gosh.
through her career. Like, you watch young Meryl Streep and it's like incredible. You watch old Meryl Streep, older Meryl Streep.
Still
I don't
incredible.
want to say she's old. She's incredible. Now I'll have Meryl Streep coming after me.
You don't want that.
No, I do not want that. I only want good
Meryl Streep.
things from Meryl Streep. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, it's interesting. I feel like this is just more proof that Los Angeles and Hollywood is insane, and that your town that you live in is crazy.
It's
and
nuts.
that people are pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I feel like if you're successful in this business, like, this is something you're going to have to deal with. Like, I think even if you have like a tiny bit of success, you have to deal with stuff like this. Like, not even Bradley Cooper level success. Like, just like, you know, whatever, like making movies full time. I'm sure you're going to deal with shit like this. So anyways, very interesting. But yeah, I don't think I asked you this question. I had a question written down from weeks ago, and I think we had to cut it for time. But I wanted to ask, like, you know, within your filmmaking process, like, what's the most important aspect of it to you?
I don't know how to, I wish I had an answer. I don't know how to answer that. Can you tell me what's important to you, or can you elaborate?
Like, is it the prep time, like where like you sit with the work and you get ready and you plan, or like is it the time on set with the actors where like you that headspace and like being there with them and like having focus in that moment? Like if someone was like, "Hey Liz, here's a script. We've got the productions all geared up, everything's set. We're going to shoot in a month, not even a month. Let's say they're going to shoot in 3 weeks. We want you to be the director. Everything's all lined up, locations, everything. All you have to do is show up and direct and work with the actors." Like, could you do that? Or is the prep part of the months and months or years of prep, is that such a crucial part of your process that you couldn't just walk onto a set and direct the shit out of a movie if you had to?
Well, I would try my best, but I think I could definitely do that. And hearing the question and also kind of, I don't know, unraveling it in my mind, I think the most important is getting time to get the shots. You know what I mean? Like, if I could sacrifice prep time to give my DP and her team more time for us to get everything we want, that's the most important thing. Like, because I guess my feeling is I never cast anyone I don't think is capable of nailing it. Right. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, you cast someone because you think they're going to nail the role. They're going to do great. You see the potential and you see the evidence. And then all of your crew people, you believe in their talent. Like, there's never or very rarely a project where you don't have like utmost faith in your whole team. And I have tons of confidence problems in myself. But if I give my team more time, then I can make the film as good as possible. If I give myself more time, I can probably talk myself in circles of insecurity where I may end up 100 degrees where I started from, but in the wrong direction by the end of that, right? Like, prep time may not help me. It might make things worse. But if I get more time on set so my team can get the footage, that seems like the most important thing, because the actors always nail it and the craftspeople always nail it. We just need the time to capture it. Is that a cop-out? I always feel like I give you cop-out answers, but that feels like the right answer in my mind. Yeah.
Well, it's just that you want to have the time to shoot the movie and that you don't want to be rushed in your production process.
Yeah. But prep, I mean, like, prep would be important to me in that, like, if I can figure, if I could do what Craig Archibald told us to do, right? Like, it was like Craig, the Craig Archibald episode will not have aired by the time this one is, but we talked to an acting coach, Craig Archibald, and he talked about having answers to 5 questions for the actor for I think essentially every scene. Like, what's the action? What's the goal? What's the objective? Things like that. If I could just have that answer for every single scene in the movie, I think that's all I would need in order to direct a movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and watching things and just saying why did that not turn out well? Why is that not as good as it could be? Why did this thing, why am I bored, or why am I, flipping to something else? And I feel like there's so many different reasons for everything, but I think when it comes to lower budget stuff, it's a lot to do with the locations. I think if you have good locations and you have dynamic looking places, and the movie is written in a way where you are moving from place to place in an interesting way, and you're not just in a blank room with a wall, that's the worst ever, example. Yeah. But that you're telling a story and you're moving through a world that you're creating as you're telling the story. I think that's such an important part of it to me. And so, I was thinking about it just now, and it's I don't think I'd want to give up the being involved in the location scouting or the location selection, to make sure that the locations are right for the script and that they're right for the cinematographer that I'm working with. Because I feel especially with my DP, he's very particular about locations. If it's not going to let him light it the way he wants to, or let him put the camera in the place he wants to put the camera in the room or wherever it is, he's going to push back on that. So I feel working with him closely through that process of picking the locations, I think to me that's really crucial. And so if someone just handed me a movie and was hey, go direct this movie, we've got everything all lined up already, it's I would be, struggling to keep up and catch up to where the team is at, get on the same page as the DP. And in that case, I probably wouldn't even be my DP. It would be another DP. So then I'd have to create a relationship with that person, and then, get on the same page, and then figure out well, we have these locations. These are the ones we're stuck with. How do we make these as dynamic as possible? And then that's a whole process. So I mean, yeah, I feel the prep time is really that's really important to me. And I mean, obviously the shooting time's important too, but I think being able to focus on the project and have the time with your team to get everything lined up perfectly, that is what I want in future projects, so that I'm ready to tackle the schedule and that I have answers for all the questions, Well, yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It's funny. I think I answered your question presuming I'd have the team I always work with. I didn't even think of it as a for hire situation, which is very short-sighted. And I also want to think about or bring up, I know I talk about Joe Bob Briggs every single week, and maybe I talk about Nosferatu every single week, but the Herzog Nosferatu, he does all these shots of landscape. And I guess his belief is the landscape is a character. And I've never done that, right? I've never thought of location really as a character or landscape as a character. And I agree with you. It is one of the differences between a good film and a great film is when the thought is put into that to such a degree that everything feels incredibly specific. It's not just a sky with clouds rolling by used to separate 2 scenes, but there's something being communicated. Yeah. So I totally agree with you on everything you're saying. Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. That was a fun little conversation. If you want to weigh in on this topic, you can send us a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you really like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes or any other places you can leave reviews, which I think there are a couple other places. I don't really know them off the top of my head, but they exist. You can finally check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast. Please check out the International Screenwriters Association, the ISA. They are an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer, including publishing your logline to a network of industry professionals, consultation courses, and their top 25 writers list that feature some of their best writers. So head over to www.networkisa.org to sign up for free today. Thanks so much to Charla Lauriston for coming on the show and for writing such a clear and thoughtful emailed pitch to us, which is Liz and I immediately were yes, this person has to come on the show. It was so good. Thanks to our editor, Jeff Reimuth, for doing the editing. And thanks to our producer, Eric Toms, for just being simply awesome. Thanks to you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker, and my first feature film, The Alternate, will be coming out Ah, jeez.
No, you're almost there. You're so close.